karma really just means action, whatever you do. But then it comes to mean the sum total of all the actions you've committed in your life, the record of your deeds, good and bad. And at the end of your life, this balance sheet of good and evil is totaled up, and depending on how it comes out, there are several different possibilities. If you have mostly good karma, but a little bit of bad karma, you go to hell first. This is counterintuitive. You go to hell for a little while, but you don't mind too much because you have all these good deeds, you're going to go to heaven. And after you go to hell, you go to heaven, where you use up the credit for your good deeds. And some people think that's it. And other people say, well, then you have to be reborn also. After heaven and after hell, there's still karma left over. And it will determine what you will be reborn as, how long you will live, and all sorts of things. So it becomes a very complicated system of reckoning, originally combined from the old Indo-European idea of heaven and hell, which is relatively easy, usually heaven or hell. Now it becomes heaven and hell, already more complicated. And beyond that, the idea that you will be reborn again and again, in each case, changing the pluses and balances on the sheet of your good and bad deeds. So there's a wonderful Hindu text which explains why it is that babies cry as soon as they're born. But these texts, and there are many of them, say, in the womb, the embryo remembers what he's done. And he says, boy, I messed that up. I'm not going to do that again. Why did I marry that woman? Why did I invest in that business? I'm not going to make any of those mistakes again. When I'm born this time, I'm going to do it different. I'm going to get it right. And then he's born, and the minute he comes out of the womb, two things happen. He suddenly realizes he is going to make all those same mistakes over and over again, and so he cries. And that is why babies cry as soon as they come out of the womb. They say, oh my God, I'm going to do it again. And the second thing that happens is that he forgets. The infant then has no memory of its former lives, although some very talented people claim that they will in fact remember their former lives. So these very different ideas of heaven and hell are put together. Then there's a question of, if one is reborn, how is one reborn? What is one reborn as? And the question of what the individual soul does with its nature is again rehearsed in many different texts. The soul is called the Atman, the self. And sometimes it's just used as a normal pronoun, as we do in our own spoken languages. It's just the normal word for the self, the Atman. But then it comes to mean the individual soul, the Atman. And then the soul, the Atman with a short a, is identified with something called the world soul, or Atman, or the infinite, or something that can't be defined. And the belief is that our individual souls are all tiny pieces of this enormous world soul which contains every living thing there is. And that when you die, if you achieve moksha, if you achieve this release, this moksha, this nirvana, you won't cease to exist altogether. You'll cease to be reborn, but you'll be united with this world soul. So just as there are these two basic forms of Hinduism, the worldly one where you just want to have a good life, and this always present goal of renunciation, there are two rather different views of karma in Hinduism. So the worldly form of Hinduism, which is the Hinduism of most Hindus, regards good karma as a good thing and bad karma as a bad thing. So the goal of such a person would be to have as much good karma as possible, to do as many good deeds, be generous, help little old ladies across the street and so forth, give money to the priests and so forth, and to have as little karma as possible of the bad kind. Such a Hindu would have as his or her goal getting to heaven, to amass as much good karma as possible, so that you'd use up your bad karma quickly in a brief experience of hell, and then you'd go to heaven and live in heaven for a long time. And I think there are many, many Hindus who think of this, who try to do as much good deeds as possible, and their goal is to live in heaven. For other forms of Hindus, however, and I think also for most Buddhists, no karma is good. And there's a certain type of saintly person who is said to live in the world and not be in the world, who have reached enlightenment but not died, and to move about in the world in such a way that no karma attaches to him whatsoever. And such a person, when he does die, will not go to heaven or hell, but will achieve this kind of moksha, this kind of release. And I think that most Hindus do not want that. They really would like to be reborn, richer, healthier, and have a good chance to get to heaven and live for a long time.